A British man who traveled to Ukraine to fight the Russians has returned home after 10 days on the front line after it became too high risk and too little reward. Ethan Dennis, 21, who formerly served in the Royal Navy, said he decided to travel east 6 days after Vladimir Putin's forces began their assault. But after 10 days in Ukraine, Dennis is now back home in Portsmouth, Hampshire. It was when the objectives we were being given became too high risk and too little reward that I decided I'd had enough, he said. Luckily I had signed an open contract with the major, so he had no problem with me returning home. Dennis said he flew to Rzeszów in southern Poland and then crossed the border into Ukraine with a group of Brits he met at the airport, which included Benchbon, 36, who went to Ukraine because he thought it was the right thing to do despite having no military experience or connections to the country. He has since returned to the UK to be with his wife and 16-year-old son after becoming worried he had joined a suicide mission. A former seaman, he said witnessing the brutal conflict firsthand has made him hope a deal between Russia and Ukraine is reached sooner rather than later, for everyone's benefit. He said, upon arrival in Ukraine, the soldiers were bundled into the back of a van and driven to Lviv, where they collected their gear and were assigned to a safe house. After 3 days in the house, the group were surrounded by a Ukrainian Special Forces team, who had been informed by a local of their position. Dennis said, at the safe house we were treated really well with comfy beds and good food. But we believe a civilian informed the Ukrainians about our foreign uniforms, which raised suspicion amongst the higher ranks. The team burst through the door and told us to put our hands on our head whilst they checked our documents and verified our stories. One of our squad even had a gun put to his head when he refused to follow one of their instructions. They had their safety mechanism off and their fingers on the triggers. It was an intense moment for us. Once they realized we were there to help, they left us alone. Unsatisfied with the lack of action they were seeing in Lviv, Dennis said he and his comrades decided to change squadrons and take the train to Kyiv. They traveled to the capital, and, on their journey, helped police detain a suspicious man, who Dennis said was found to be making frequent calls to Russia. The suspected spy was arrested and taken to a detention center for further questioning, Dennis said. When they arrived in Kiev, he said dozens of families sleeping in the tube station stood up to applaud them. The squad were then driven to an undisclosed location where they were briefed by an ex-major on how to conduct covert operations on the front line just outside the city. It was a surreal feeling getting off the train and having all these strangers start clapping you, Dennis said. It felt nice to be appreciated by these people who right now have so little to be enthusiastic about. When we arrived at the briefing room with a different unit in Kiev, we were handed better kit and proper military IDs. It was a much more organized outfit than the unit we were with before, and within a day we could see why. We were thrown right into the action and sent to guard a position just outside Kiev, which was a key asset in the Ukrainian war effort. Dennis, who said he served in the military for 4 years as an engineer, added, "Sometimes the Russians were so scared in contact they weren't even able to get rounds away. There was an obvious lack of training amongst them and a lack of motivation to be there, which we used to our advantage." The fighting was intense and very scary at points, but I just remembered all my training and tried to take calculated risks. After deciding he had had enough, Dennis boarded a refugee train out of the capital and back to Lviv. There he stayed the night in a Red Cross tent, and was awoken by the sound of shelling in the city. After a long walk to the border, he eventually made it back over to Polish soil, but his journey was interrupted when Ukrainian secret police stopped him from crossing. He said he was detained by immigration officials who were not convinced by his passport or why he was in Ukraine. He was eventually freed but claims he was closely followed throughout the rest of his time in Poland before flying back to London on March 19. Dennis, who was working as a carpenter before he flew out, said, "Getting home was really stressful. There's always that doubt in your mind something may go wrong and you could be stuck." The train ride to Lviv was the worst journey of my life. The relief I felt when the plane left that runway is indescribable. My girlfriend was overjoyed to see me, and I've been told if I want to go and fight again she won't be there when I get back, so that's my decision made. Advertisement.